But you have to make me the presenter.
Yes, yes, I will be doing that.
You have?
I will be doing that just in a minute.
Okay.
Once the session become live on YouTube, I think you can, till then you can start sharing your screen, and once it becomes live on YouTube, I will.
There we go. Now we got it. Now we got it. Okay. All right. So we're down here. That's what we want. Okay. Let's go up here. Back this up a little bit. Got it. This is the video. See if,
knowing what's happened,
okay. You can hear that okay?
The damage that I've caused so many people.
It's okay, Arquette?
Yes, yes, I can hear that.
All right, we're ready to go then. Ready to roll. When you're ready, let's go.
Yes, yes, we can surely start.
Give me a countdown, 3, 2, 1, and I'm ready.
Yeah, 3, 2, 1. You can go.
All right. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Glad to be here. It's Mike Dreznes, little technical user error trying to get on board, but we're here ready to go now. So again, well, great opportunity. Thank you so much to Harkidat and everybody at NSS and IIT at Roorkee. Great opportunity for me to be here. Now, again, we've got a very, very important issue to discuss today. And but first of all, we have to have our mandatory COVID-19 update. Okay, this is required. You have to do this because it's a big issue. And again, this is current numbers. 2.271 million people died as of today. It's terrible. This is something that we've never seen before. You'll be telling your kids and your grandkids that you lived through this. It's just been unbelievable. Terrible, terrible, terrible event. Again, if you look at the numbers here, 10,000 people died in the last 24 hours. This is just horrific. The good news coming out of this, though, has been our global response. We have gotten together as a world and we have responded very strongly. And if you look anywhere, the front page news on the TVs, everywhere you go, it doesn't matter where around the world, you're going to see something about COVID-19. And it's been great. The response, we're doing things, we're making things happen. Heck, we even closed Disneyland, which is unheard of. We don't close Disneyland. We close Disneyland. And again, because there's a lot of things happening. But did you know that a year ago, on Wednesday, February the 5th, statistically speaking, about 3,700 people died. 3,700 people died, and they died on the roads around the world. Motorcyclists, bicyclists, pedestrians, people in a car, people in a truck, people on a bus. 3,700 people died 1 year ago today, statistically speaking. That's horrific. That's another horrific event. But where's the front page news? Did anybody read about those? I don't think so. Was there a coordinated global response? No, there really wasn't. So for that reason, we're referring to this situation that we have on the roads, the carnage of the road, is we're referring to as a forgotten pandemic. So if you look at the World Health Organization, they're estimated about 1,350,000 people die every year on the roads around the world. 1,350,000 people. That's equivalent about 3,700 people every day, which is the equivalent. Remember that terrible crash over in Ethiopia, the 737 MAX? About 20 fully loaded 737s crash every single day on the roads around the world. So you think about this statement from WHO, 1,350,000 people. We're going to be here for the next hour. And while we're here for the next hour, about 150 people are going to die on the roads around the world. 150 people. And in India, that's going to be about 35 people. 35 people. And sadly, it could be your mother, your father, your brothers, your sisters, your kids, your best friends. You don't know. Your husbands, your wives. But it's going to happen. 35 people are going to die in the next hour. If you look at the numbers coming from the World Health Organization, close to 300,000 people a year dying every year in India. This is unacceptable. It's about the equivalent of losing a city. I love the statement here coming from your Ministry of Transport and Highways. You lose a city every year. And you look at the numbers, it's also the economic cost. About almost 8% of your GNP is lost every year because of these crashes out on the road. Globally, again, 1,350,000 people dying. In addition, another 20 to 50 million serious global injuries. So I'm going to ask again, Where is that coordinated global effort to find a cure for this forgotten pandemic? Where is it? Because it's not out there. Maybe we should close down Disney World if people or if there's crashes by people trying to get to Disney World. The closest thing that we have to that coordinated global response was something that was started back in May 11th of 2011. It was something called the United Nations Decade of Action for Road Safety. It was a 10-year plan. We put this together with the goal of trying to reduce projected fatalities. They said, hey, if we don't do something by 2020, we're going to be killing almost 2 million people every year on the roads around the world. So they want to reduce that by 50%. This was started up by the banks, the multilateral development banks. They were the ones who got it started, and they went to the World Health Organization. They get the World Health Organization involved. When they did that, I said, why would you get the World Health Organization involved on the situation out in the roads? Shouldn't they be worried about things like SARS and AIDS and all these terrible epidemics and pandemics that are happening around the world, killing all these people? That's what WHO does. WHO came back and said, no, my friend, you've got a growing epidemic on your roads. That was the words they used. That was 10 years ago. And it said, this is happening not just 1 year, not just 1 year. Unfortunately, this is happening every single year for all of the years of your lives. So I went back and did a little homework on this to find out what are some of the worst epidemics or pandemics in history. That plague of Justinian had to be a doozy. 541 killed 100 million people. But if you look at HIV/AIDS, they're saying from 1960 till today, it's about 39,000 people have died. Well, if I use that same statistic and figure not 1,350,000 people, but about 1 million people a year, that means we've killed about 60 million people dying in these car crashes, arguably making this the second worst global epidemic ever. And we're not doing anything about it. Now, if there were vaccines, if they were available, wouldn't a country have a moral responsibility to give the vaccines to its people? You have to agree they would, right? Even if it costs money. That's always the other argument. We don't have the money. Even if it costs money. What we're seeing with the pandemic, we're going to get the vaccines, everybody, and they will cost money. And interesting, unlike the COVID-19, there are many vaccines available for this forgotten pandemic. Are you aware of them all? Is everybody aware of them? Are you using them? Well, if I look at some of the excerpts coming out from PRC, which is the World Road Association, many existing roads and many new roads are being built as unsafe. If you look at an organization called IRAP, they're saying 55% of the world's roads are 1 or 2 star roads out of a 5-star rating. That's totally unacceptable. And this chart really makes me crazy. And it shows, based on this chart, that about 92% of the fatalities are happening in lower and middle income countries. That's 92% of the traffic, 92% of the fatalities, only about 54% of the traffic. And if you look at this chart, this is even worse. That gray, the gray side, the gray means those fatality rates are going up. The yellow, they're going down. Why are they going down in the higher income countries, the middle income countries? Because they are using the vaccines. Why are the lower income countries not using them? Too often when I go around the world, and I'm doing this for 35 years, too often the road authorities say the reason we're not using it, I didn't know, never knew about it. I tell them about things that are 25 years old. They say, oh, wow, that's brand new. I said, no. And if I look back at the decade of action, as far as I'm concerned, it's been a failure. It's been a failure. Statistics don't lie. As I showed you before, back in 2010, we had 1,240,000 people. Our goal was to reduce the projected rate by 50,000, by 50%. We didn't do that. That's a failure. Also, look at this. Medicine's doing a great thing. The medical science are bringing down all these diseases. The death caused by disease is going down. Not when it's talking about death by car crash. Road injuries now, and the road traffic injuries, as we call them, that's fatalities and serious injuries. The number one cause of death from ages 5 to 29. And what are we doing about it? We're not doing enough. WHO recognizes it's been a failure. And I'm going to take part of the blame of this, because the World Health Organization, this decade of action we call the United Nations Road Safety Collaboration, there's 5 pillars. I'm the co-chairman for Pillar 2. Co-chairman for Pillar 2, which talks about safer roads and mobility, the infrastructure. So I'm going to take the hit. I've been involved in this for all 10 years. But I've learned this over my life. You encounter a lot of defeats, but you can never be defeated. And the one thing this decade of action did achieve in these first 10 years is it did raise the awareness. Started to raise the awareness. We're seeing things like in India. You now have what was your Road Safety Week. You started that up. You went out. A lot of people going out, raising the campaigns. You've started it out this year. It's not just a week. It's going to be a month, right? This is a Road Safety Month this year in India. And that's wonderful. You're raising the awareness levels. But raising the awareness levels and not acting on it, don't waste your time. The road to awareness is really important. But what do you have to do next? For global road safety and for India, what happens next? Well, we finish off that first decade of action. We move now into the second decade of action. Global 2030, the second decade of action. The United Nations and the General Assembly in August approved this next goal, which basically is to reduce fatalities by 50%. Not projected fatalities, but that 1,350,000, we're going to reduce that by 50% by 2030. Now, that's a daunting task. Until you think about it, that equates to about 7 to 8% a year. That we can do. If you can do that for 10 years, you're going to have a 50% reduction. And the recommendations that we're making to road authorities around the world, the 9 recommendations, there's one thing that jumps out in every single recommendation. It's managing speed. There's this kinetic energy. A friend of mine named Craig Milligan says, if we can just control kinetic energy on the road, we will make the road safe. The reason for that is that V squared, the velocity squared. Every single one of the recommendations coming out of this next decade of action, every single one of the 9 is going to refer to speed in some way, shape, or form. Every one of the 9. There's a reason for that. There's a reason for it. Because we know if we can bring the speeds down, we can make those roads a lot safer. And India recognizes that as well. So if we go forward and say, so what's the plan? What are you going to do? What happens for India? Well, we had a meeting just this last week as we started to move forward, and now we're starting to see this is brand new information, just 3-4 days old. We do now have a draft of our global plan. And these decades, these pillars that we had, road safety management, that's getting the buy-in, road safety, safer roads and mobility, the infrastructure, safer vehicles, safer road users, that's the education, the enforcement, that's getting the vulnerable road users, and then the global response, the getting people to the hospital in that golden hour. They may be replaced by these, the infrastructure, vehicle safety, behaviors, post-crash, modal shift. That's coming. That's probably going to happen. But the major shift is going to be that we're not just going to focus, like we did in the first 10 years, on reducing these fatalities, but now we also want to focus on reducing those serious injuries. We take the serious injuries and fatalities and create a word that we call the road traffic injuries. So the question comes up, what specific actions can we take? What specifically can we do in order to go out and try to make the road safe? And again, these are some of the things that we're throwing out right now that need to be talked about. And you're all going to get a copy of this presentation. So I'm not going to take time to go through this real carefully right now. But again, you'll see these are some of the things that we're asking you to do. These 12 targets, these 12 goals. And so, what else can you do? Well, that's a great question, right? That is a great question. What else can you do? Well, safety first. If we can take the vehicles off of the road, we're going to make those roads safer, right? That's common sense. This is actually a road in North Korea. Safe road, I guess. But if we can take the vehicles off the road, how do you do that? Well, a lot of people aren't driving to offices anymore, are they? You may not. We may continue that trend. You don't have to necessarily drive to campus to go to school. You can do it from home. A lot of you doing it right now. Other things, you can shop from home. People are buying things on Amazon. They're video conferences, just like we're doing right now. We don't necessarily have to be live. That means we don't have to drive somewhere. Charging high tolls that go into certain areas of a city. Better transit, that's great. More bicycles. It's really tough to buy a bicycle right now. A lot of people are riding bikes. Again, they've got to continue that process. Some other things that we're seeing out there, flexible work hours. Do we have to have 9 to 5 hours? How about having more carpools? Or not that kind of carpool, but a carpool, or that kind of carpool, or even that kind of carpool. A carpool where we share the road, we share the car, put more people in a car. You know, the HOV lanes, the high accuracy vehicle lanes. But what else can we do? Focusing on safety first. Well, understand road safety is like a three-legged stool, and you need all three legs to make it work. Otherwise, it won't work. In a road safety, the three legs, it starts with the road user. Then we go to the vehicle, and then we go to the road. Each one is critical. And then we talk about the 5 E's. We start with the 3 E's: engineering, education, enforcement. And then we also will bring in the emergency response. And then we also bring in evaluation. You go through those and always evaluate to see, did you do the right thing? So if I go back and look at the road user, for the road user, it's education and enforcement. I'm looking for the worst drivers in the world. Anybody out there a bad driver? I'm looking for the worst drivers. Here's your competition. This is a guy over in Nigeria, a taxi driver. You can see it's going to happen here. Fellow's going to cross the street. The taxi driver's going to hit him. The guy just looks at him, keeps on walking. That apparently upsets the taxi driver. He goes up on the sidewalk and hits him again. Now, the amazing thing to me is these two guys standing over here just looking at it like, well, this is Tuesday. It happens all the time. I'm guessing this poor guy who just got hit is probably screaming, you know, probably yelling, probably shouting, hey, you know, stop. Now, the taxi driver does finally stop because this poor guy probably at least broke his ankle or his leg, and the guy, you know, is not able to get up. Taxi driver is going to come back and try to help him, right? No, he's not. So, again, that's my worst driver in the world. And I'm wondering, how bad of a driver do you have to be in this quarantine traffic when there's nobody else out there and you still get into a crash? That's a bad driver, right? I'm convinced, you know, that this manual does exist in some countries, the bad driver's handbook. So we try to educate young children. We educate, make sure you're wearing a seatbelt, make sure you look both ways when you're crossing the street. And we go into graduated driver's licenses for drivers. And again, we continue that education process all the way through. And enforcement's another key one. And by the way, police enforcement is police corruption. We got nothing if we allow this corruption to continue to happen. We have to stop it. Stop the corruption. Give the police the tools they need, whatever that is. This over in Italy, again, they have these Lamborghinis and these Maseratis. The police couldn't catch them. They gave the police Lamborghinis. And again, they're able to catch them now. This is my own idea. Okay, I don't think people would speed if you saw something like this on the side of the road. Okay, probably not going to happen. Here's another one. I call this the mobile police, the movable police. There it is. Okay, again, this is another one. This is you'll see these signs, speed enforced by aircraft. Ever wonder what it was? It's down in Georgia. This guy's going to show you. This guy's speeding. Here comes the aircraft, and he's not going to speed. That's not real. Just so you know, that is not real. That's not real. Okay, so we go on to the vehicle. And the vehicles, when engineering starts showing up for the first time. The vehicle, again, we put technologies in the vehicles to make them the safest vehicles on the roads today. And the vehicles that your kids drive, your grandkids drive, they'll be safer yet again. We keep on adding more and more safety. And again, this is a crash. One of those cars was made in Mexico, same model. One made in Mexico, one made in the U.S. Which one do you think is which? Well, again, the one made in the U.S., they're required to have certain safety features built into the car. This is an issue India has. Okay, Mexico didn't have those because they're cheaper. So again, why are you allowing all this technology to be developed and you're not requiring it on your cars? It's your responsibility to make sure the vehicles are properly used and then maintained through inspection programs. I mean, there's so much wrong with this picture, I don't even know where to begin. So again, these are inspection programs that you want to have. And I move forward into the third leg. And this is the important one, the road. We'll spend a little bit of time discussing this. The engineering being brought into the roads. Where we can design our roads using the technologies that are available. And people always say, well, Mike, yeah, but if we just stop the speeding and we had to stop the drinking and everybody wore their seatbelt, we wouldn't have any problems, right? Not necessarily so. You look at this, you know, this is the road condition. That road is either improperly designed, improperly installed, or improperly maintained. So I go back to these 4 E's. Each one is very important. And the 5th E, evaluation, because you always want to try something and make sure you had the right thing. All 5 E's are really critical and important. But for right now, for the rest of this presentation, I'm going to go back and focus a little bit more on, again, you need all of these, or else you're not going to have a safe road. The result will be a disaster. I'm going to focus, because of time, on the road. This is a great quote. Nelson Mandela, he didn't even go to the World Cup down in South Africa because his great-granddaughter Zenny was killed by a drunk driver. And when it happened, he couldn't even go to the opening. The minister down there had a great quote at one of our United Nations meetings. He said, sometimes the living have to close the eyes of the dead, and sometimes the dead open the eyes of the living. Well, again, you got about 300,000 reasons to have eyes open down in India every year. You need to open your eyes to understand what's happening, what you need to do about it. So let's focus on the road and what you can do in India. And I'll go back to my pillar 2, sort of my baby, or the infrastructure, whatever we're going to be called in the future. But we're focusing on implementing something we call the safe system approach. Safe system approach is an outgrowth of something similar that we saw over in Sweden called Vision Zero, in the US called Towards Zero Death. Safe system approach came out of Australia. And what it focuses basically on 3 things. It focuses on having safer roads and vehicles, having proper speed limits, and something called a forgiving road. So safer road users and vehicles. Again, 5-star drivers, 5-star pedestrians, give them the education, give them the training that they need, the enforcement that's necessary. 5-star vehicles, as I said before, making sure we've added all the technologies. Germany credited a 40% reduction in their fatality rate to the vehicle safety factors. Can India say the same thing? I don't think so. And that's something maybe you need to work on as you go forward. So again, we have different, the NCAP test, the new car assessment program. They crash the car, they give it a rating. Proper speed limits. The human body can only withstand a certain amount of force. And that's what we're seeing, this 20 mile an hour or 30 kilometers an hour in places where pedestrians are located is being used quite a bit. We know on a head-on crash, and again, high-speed road, that's one of the worst. And a pedestrian crash, we know that if somebody gets hit at 30 kilometers an hour, only about a 10% chance they die. Double that number to 60 kilometers, and that's going to go to about a 90% likelihood of that person dying. For that reason, we're seeing like London and a lot of cities around the world now are taking the speed limit down to 20 miles an hour or 30 kilometers an hour. Again, same thing we're seeing here with motorcycles. We know at a speed over that speed, good chance somebody's going to die. Intersection crashes, roadside, running off the road. We know with a certain amount of speed limit that if you can't control the driver, control the speed limit. And then the 5-star roads, and this is where forgiving roads comes into play. Forgiving roads basically says we need to look back at the engineers, the person who's designed, maintained, and installed the road. Because everybody wants me to tell them about these concepts to make all the accidents go away. I got bad news for you. As long as there's people like you and me driving those cars, they're never going to go away. It's always going to happen because the reason is we all make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. There we go. Makes mistakes, right? We all make mistakes. We all do some stupid things. It's natural. It's normal. You're a human being. You're going to do some dumb things. It's nothing to be ashamed of. This guy, he lost his phone, trying to get it with a stick. His buddy says, I'll help you out. He goes over and he gets the stick back. Okay, obviously, not too smart, right? They're human beings. We do some dumb things. There's installation backwards. We're humans. Accept the fact you're going to make mistakes. You know this is going to happen. It's just a question of when, right? So again, we do some dumb things as human beings. Accept the fact. How many times did people have to walk through the door? They had to put a sign up there that says this is not an exit. How about this sign? 2-hour parking from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. We just do some dumb things, right? It's okay. I don't think that bike's going to get much protection from that lock. How about this? Or this? Remove your child before folding. This guy had to lose a bet. I want to think he lost a bet, right? I'm sure this guy lost a bet. So again, we do some dumb things. The problem is when you do these dumb things, when you're sitting in a car or if you're riding on a motorcycle, the result could be a serious crash where somebody gets hurt or somebody dies. So you need to accept the fact that accidents will never go away. Then we always hear this argument. Yeah, but Mike, but aren't drivers responsible for like 95% of the crashes? Traditionally, that's what we've always said. Stop it. Stop it. In India also, stop it. Stop it. Stop blaming the driver, because road users will make mistakes. I just showed you they're human beings. Part of the safe system approach says accept the fact that people will make mistakes. This is what we think it's more likely that we're seeing, that about a third of the time it's somebody, the reason for the crash was the road was improperly designed, installed, or maintained. And going back to that 95% of the problem being the driver, we're not doing that anymore. Implement the safe system approach and design what we call a forgiving road. Accept the fact that people will make mistakes, and then design roads so they don't pay for that silly mistake with capital punishment. So why do the drivers make mistakes? All right, it's a fair question. How do drivers make mistakes? Well, this is the biggest problem we have right here: drinking and driving. And again, when we talk about single vehicle non-pedestrian crashes, which is one car, no pedestrian, and about 30% of the time that's the fatalities, single vehicle non-pedestrian, about 50% of the time somebody is drinking and driving. Not necessarily the person who dies, somebody. I want to introduce you to a young lady, Jackie Sabarito. Jackie's a young lady. She grew up down in Venezuela, single child, spoiled rotten little girl. She was an engineering student like many of you. And again, she had the opportunity when she was about 18 years old to go to the United States, go to the University of Texas, and take a course to work on to improve her English for a year. While she was there on September 19th, she was driving around with 4 of her friends, and their car was impacted head on by a kid, 17-year-old kid, a drunk driver. He's out drinking with his friends. 2 of the people were killed instantly. 2 of the other people were able to get out of the car. Jackie was stuck in the car. Her foot was stuck under the dashboard. She could not get out, and the car burst into flames. I'm going to warn you, the next couple pictures are graphic. She was stuck, couldn't get out. She had 3rd-degree burns throughout her body. She burned for 45 seconds inside that car. She's had multiple surgeries. About 60% of her body severely burned. But there's her dad. That's still his little girl. He's still trying to smile, but he's doing things for her he never thought he'd ever do. It's getting tougher and tougher to smile. But that's still his little girl. Now, the kid who hit her, a kid named Reggie Steffi, he was that 17-year-old kid. He's never going to be able to forgive himself. He did go to jail. He did pay some fines, but he knows he destroyed 5 lives. He's never going to be able to forgive himself.
Knowing what's happened, knowing the damage that I've caused so many people, so many families, it's something that I can't describe to you about.
The person that caused my accident destroyed my life completely.
And the prison sentence is nothing compared to the life sentence I'm going to do from what I did. Consequences of what I did. The loss of life. Didn't have to happen. Period.
So again, here's Jackie 4 years after the accident. They were still working on her. And you have to understand something, that it sounds a little callous, but not everyone gets hit by a drunk driver is going to die. But man, I'll tell you what, this beautiful girl, sometimes I wonder if it wasn't as bad. Now, Jackie, to her credit, she did meet up with Jeffrey. They became friends, after he was out of jail. She went around the country talking to kids, especially in high school, about the dangers of drinking and driving. But sadly, probably because of a lot of what happened to her during those surgeries, she did pass away 2 years ago at the age of 40 years old from cancer. So again, drinking and driving, we got to stop it. Every effort has to be made. I love what they do in Botswana. Every week they publish these people were convicted of drinking and driving. You don't want your name in the newspaper. You got to do whatever it takes. Another reason that drivers make mistakes are distractions. We take our eye off of the road for all kinds of reasons. We're doing all kinds of stupid things. you know, and you know, we were eating and we're drinking, we were on the telephones, we're playing with our computer, we're doing all these dumb things. We have Pokemon Go, which is even crazier. Looking for Pokemon in your car. Texting while driving is a big one. You know, and I always tell my wife, you know, I can multitask. You know, I can multitask, so I should be able to do this. She says, Mike, you think sitting on the toilet reading the newspaper is multitasking. I argue that's multitasking. But let me say a little quiz with all of you. I'm going to give you a little exam here. I want you to count how many times there's going to be 3 girls dressed in white, 3 girls dressed in black. Just count how many times the girls in white pass the ball to each other. Just the girls in white, all right? How many times will they pass the ball? If there is a correct answer, you'll get absolutely nothing for getting it right. But I still count how many times do the girls in white pass the ball to each other. Just count if there is a right answer. I'm just worried about the girls in white, just the girls wearing the white shirts. How many times will they pass that ball to each other? Just the girls in white. Okay, we're almost there. You get over to her. She goes over there, pass it back. Okay, what's the right answer? Anybody? Who's got the right answer? Okay. Akidal, what do you got? 16. All right, if you got 16, how many of you saw a gorilla? Because I didn't see it the first time I took this test. How many of you saw the gorilla? How many of you saw the curtain change colors? How many of you saw one of the girls dressed in black leave? So at the end, there's only 2 of them left. I didn't see any of that because I didn't ask you to look at it. Let's go back and review it one more time, and you're going to see everything I just said happened. So again, to start off, we got 3 girls dressed in white, 3 girls dressed in black. There's the curtain, bright red. Here comes my gorilla. Right in the middle, he comes out. He's going to bang on his chest. There goes the girl in the black. She's gone. Curtain just changed color. You didn't see it. They didn't ask you to look at it. If you're on the phone, you're not paying attention to the road. If you're eating, you're drinking coffee. It doesn't matter why you take your eye off the road, but if you take your eye off the road and you're traveling 100 kilometers an hour, by the time your mind registers, I have to stop, get off of the gas, get on the brake, and mechanically bring the vehicle to a stop, you're going to travel almost 2 football fields. A lot of things can happen, and we need to understand that. So again, we have perception plus reaction plus braking equals stopping distance. Another reason that drivers make mistakes, you're almost there. You're kind of tired. You think you can make it. Unfortunately, about 1/3 of the time in these single vehicle non-pedestrian crashes, the driver was asleep. And again, this is a taxi driver. And a lot of times we see this in taxis, especially in the private little buses that you have. These guys drive a long time. This guy's going to fall asleep, hit a concrete wall in the middle, overreact, hit a concrete wall on the side. And this is a good reason why you should always wear your seatbelt. So again, keeping drivers awake. Could be other reasons drivers make mistakes. Could be bad weather, underinflated tires, overinflated tires. People do drive too fast. People drive too slow. So there's your problem. And the question now is, you know the problem, so what are you going to do about it? You know, accidents are never going away, but we can prevent or reduce the consequences of the crashes. So what are you going to do? How do you do it? What are you going to do? Well, let's go back to this pillar 2 one more time. The decade of action and the safe system approach. How do we make the roads forgiving roads in India? Well, understand what we want to try to do ideally is keep the vehicle on the road. So if we want to keep the vehicle on the road, there's different things we can do. As people drop off of the road, these kind of steep drop-offs are a problem. You can't get back up again. If we just curve that, very simple, something called the safety edge. Just curve it down. The driver can get back up on the road. Very simple to do. You're not doing it in India. Don't know why. Don't know why. Very simple. Rumble strips. Putting these on the side of the road. So if somebody does leave the road, they're going to be notified. If they're going to put it in the side of the road or the middle of the road, there'll be something like, they're going to hear a noise. Put them back on the road. High friction surface technologies, especially the approaches to an intersection or in curves to maintain that friction with the road. Proper signage with the right type of delineation, either vertical and horizontal, putting the right products out there, smarter vehicles. All these things will help to keep the vehicles on the road. But what happens if the vehicle does leave the road and you have a rigid object like this, which sadly you have way too much in India? You're missing the boat. Number one, I provide for a safer recovery. That's the best thing. So if I go back, is everybody familiar with something called AASHTO? I don't know if you've heard of AASHTO or not, but AASHTO is the American Association State Highway Transportation Officials. They have some guidelines. They call it the Roadside Design Guide. If you're over in Europe, might be something called RISER. RISER is the Roadside Infrastructure for Safer Roads. RISER and AASHTO both say the same thing. You got somebody, you got a hazard located close to the best thing to do is eliminate that hazard. Can you get rid of it? Well, I'll tell you what, if I'm in the design stage, I can probably do that. It's not that big of a deal. But for an existing road, it might be impossible. But the best solution is always eliminate the hazard. Go to this next step. If I can't eliminate that hazard, can I move that hazard further away from the road to create what I call a clear zone? Again, provide for a safe recovery, a clear zone where drivers can get back up on the road and out of those poles right next to the road. That's the next option. If I can do it, that's great. If I can't eliminate it, I can't move it, I go to the third option, modify that hazard somehow. Make that hazard less rigid. A lot of different ways of doing that. And that's, again, reducing the severity. This is in New Zealand. Culvert, very dangerous. All I need to do is cover the culvert. It's a piece that you're missing. Now, if a driver goes off, he's not going to die. I forgave him for making that mistake. Other things, poles. In California, they use wood poles with holes driven on the bottom so it breaks evenly. In other places, we have breakaway devices, slip bases, collapsible poles. All this technology, all these vaccines are out there. None of them are being used in India. You tell me why. You tell me why. And you're killing 300,000 people a year. Again, all these vaccines are there. Here's another one. If I can't eliminate, I can't move, and I can't modify, again, another option is to then shield that hazard with a barrier or something called a crash cushion. Barriers, very simple, very basic, different types of barriers. It's rigid barriers, semi-rigid barriers, flexible barriers. But again, a barrier, different types of barriers, there's ends. When you connect them, you need to have a proper transition. I'm not getting into the detail here, but again, this is all the stuff that you're not doing right now. Here's the problem. You have one barrier that deflects, you connect it to another barrier that doesn't. This is physics, and this is happening all the time in India and other countries around the world, and there's no excuse. All you do is put in a proper transition. Make that part of your standards to have it there, and people will do it. But if they don't know about it, they're not going to do it. Now you get this kind of performance in that same crash. The other thing that we look at, again, is putting in a proper terminal, a crash-worthy terminal. This is at the end of the barrier. And again, this I'm going to spend a little bit of time here because this is one of my big problems that I have with everybody around the world. We take things like this, and this is a rigid, solid end, and that's where somebody's going to hit it. That's where they're going to get hurt. Throw things like this up there. It's never tested. I don't know if it works. No idea. So again, these longitudinal barriers have two ends, the downstream and the upstream. On the upstream end, I need to put something out there that will stop a vehicle, make it an anchor to redirect that vehicle when it gets hit. So it needs to be very rigid, very strong. But when it gets hit head on, so again, it hit on the side, I want it very rigid, right? Hold that barrier in place. But when I hit it head on, I want it very soft, so it will disappear. So I wanted to do two totally different things. That's an engineering challenge. And again, some of you guys really like the technical stuff. This is your challenges. Well, again, the answers are out there, and this is not it. This, unfortunately, is what we did 30 years ago. And unfortunately, this is the standard in India right now. It's been outlawed in other countries for over 20, 25 years. And here's why. When a car hits that turn down end, it goes flying. This is physics. Once again, when you design and build a new road in India right now, this is what you're going to put in. You tell me why. Because it won't work. And again, cars and trucks are not meant to fly. And unfortunately, this is what you have, and physics will show again and again and again, this is what's going to happen. Cars hit these turns, it's called a turn down end, and they go up in the air, and bad things happen when it comes down. And unfortunately, in your standards, this is allowed today. You tell me why. Tell me why. This happens to be in Thailand, a turn down end. There's a bus with 13 people on board a couple years ago. They're all alive right now and going to die in about 3, 2, 1, bam, they all just died. Somebody made a mistake. That was a needless death. They didn't have to die. Somebody said that was okay. So again, we have campaigns going on to try to stop the use of these turn down ends. When I started one of these campaigns with the Transportation Research Board and IRF, I got a call from a guy. He said, Mike, I love what you're doing. Guy's name was Mark Knoll. He says, I want my son to be the picture boy, the poster boy. This guy's name was Steve Knoll. His son was Mark Knoll. Big, tough kid, football player, lived out in Virginia. And his father told me this story. He said on August 24, 2008, so we're talking 12 years ago, this kid was driving around with his friends. They came up to a curve. There's a tractor coming in the other direction. So Mark and his brother, Mark was sitting they moved the car over to allow the tractor to get by. It hit that turn down end, which you have all over India. The car went flying up in the air, came down, hit a tree. The driver was hurt pretty bad. Mark was sitting in the passenger seat. Mark was hurt really, really bad. Serious brain injury, broken bones, to the point he was in a coma for 4 months. After about 2 weeks, the doctors came to the parents and said, I think you should just let Mark go, let him die. And they said, no, we think Mark would want us to fight for him. And they did. They said, no, we're not going to let that happen. And that's Mark today. That's that big, tough kid. He's in a nursing home. He's being taken care of. Again, he's like the mentality of about a 6-year-old. He's never going to drive a car. He's never going to pay taxes. His parents ended up getting divorced. His young brother, looked up to him, became a drug addict. All these, and Mark's father, Steve, asked me to ask you, what do you guys think? You allow this to happen on your road. Think about the cost involved. This kid now, he's never going to drive a car. We're going to take care of him for the rest of his life. And then Steve asked these guys, if they had just extended that guardrail around, did the right thing, put in a proper terminal, you think it would have made a difference? What do you think? Yeah, I think it would have. Great story, real quick. Steve told me recently he visited Mark, and Mark said he was visited by a psychologist, and they asked Mark, what do you wish could be different in your life? 3 things. He said, number 1, I wish I was never in that crash. Number 2, he said, I wish my friends would still come and visit me. Think about it. 16-year-old kid, they all came out. He's in this hospital, about a couple of kilometers outside of town. They went off. They went in the Army. They went to college. They got married. They don't come around anymore. And number 3, and when his father told me this, he burst into tears. He said, 3rd thing my son told that psychologist is, I wish I had died that day. Don't do that to the people in India. Don't let it happen. You have the vaccines. It's time to stop the use of these crash-worthy ends. And again, in my tombstone, there's going to be 2 things written. And I told my wife, I want this on my tombstone. Number 1, Margaret, I'm waiting for you, because I always am waiting for my wife. And number 2, end turn down ends. These are 2 things I want on my tombstone. And again, you need to do what you can do to end these needless deaths. Einstein had a great quote. Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. It won't change unless you do something about it. I don't know what you're waiting for. What are you waiting for? For somebody else to die? There's a variety of these terminals out there. They're not in your standards right now. You need to understand something. When you have a crash with a rigid object, there's actually going to be 3 separate collisions. The first collision, the vehicle hit something. Obvious, right? The vehicle hit something. That's the first crash. First impact. That's an obvious one. The second impact, the people inside the car, they're moving forward. They haven't hit something for a couple of milliseconds. They're going to move forward, and ultimately they will hit something, maybe the windscreen, maybe the seatbelt, maybe the airbag. They'll hit something as they move forward. That's that second collision. The third collision, our bodies are about 70% water. The internal organs floating around in there, your heart, your kidney, the spleen, all connected together with little straps. What ends up happening is the force of deceleration are going to move those forward. They're going to hit the chest cavity, causing internal injuries and the bleeding that will kill you. And again, that's that third impact, and that's another one we need to take into account with the deceleration.
Richard didn't want to die. He couldn't stop himself. The collision with the car was going to kill him, but he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, so he continued on his journey. When he hit the inside of the car, that didn't kill him either. But his internal organs carried on traveling until they hit his ribcage, and his lungs were punctured, and the left artery of his heart was torn. And that's what killed Richard.
That's what's killing the people in India. Same thing with your brain. It's just floating around in there. You have high deceleration that moves forward. That's called a concussion. So again, if you allow this to happen with those blunt ends that you have, and you're not, because it's in your standards, and not put in these things called a crash cushion. We're not detailed to get into them now, but there's thousands of different types of crash cushions out there. So in summary, road safety equals managing kinetic energy. I want you to yield to common sense. That just seems so simple, right? It's a very simple assignment. But let's say that we're going to build a condominium that's over in India somewhere. And we're building that condominium. We want every one of the units to have a nice balcony. And as we're building it, they're saying, hey, they're getting expensive. People don't want to pay this much money. Where can we cut some costs? And somebody comes to you and says, I got an idea. On those balconies, let's not put a railing. Let's just not have a railing because that'll save some money. That'll save some money, make it cheaper. And we'll put up signs and we'll tell people, be aware the balcony's not on ground level. We'll tell them don't be drinking and don't be tired. Don't get tired. Don't be distracted. Don't go out on that balcony. You can't do that, can you? You're not going to be allowed to do it. There's going to be standards that won't let that happen. If it's not safe, it's not going to happen. And yet on our roads, we build roads, let people walk right next to those roads. We set high speeds. We have roads where people are getting hit. We put roads where there's traffic driving right next to each other, separated by less than a meter. And it's just a question of time before somebody is going to make a mistake, like down in Ecuador. This mother driving a kid to school for the first day of school, got hit by a truck. She was killed. Here they're pulling the kid out of the car. They're going to have to tell her mom's dead. Then we say, well, okay, Mike, I'll tell you what. We can't afford the balcony, but how about we put a yellow stripe out there? We'll warn people now. We'll warn them that it's dangerous because there's no balcony. That's what we do on the roads, right? That's got to be good enough. That should work. It's not. And again, we're going to put up a balcony that's not going to be some cheap material. You're going to be required to put a balcony up that's going to work. And it has to go through some testing. You don't do that in India. You don't have testing on for products you're putting on the roads. So you're putting things out there, you don't know if it works. And there's very detailed, very clear testing criteria for all this roadside hardware. If a roadside barrier is not safe, bottom line, don't use it. It's sort of like having a parachute, jumping out of an airplane. I give you a parachute and I said, hey, Harky Dog, here's your parachute. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know. And you don't find out until it's too late. And that's what you're doing on the roads. So safe installation. You start putting a balcony up on these condominiums, you got to put it up a certain way. There's criteria. It tells you how to install it. If not, it's not going to work. It's the same thing when you're putting in a product on the road. That's backwards. That's the wrong way to install it. And unfortunately, we see this all the time. Somebody had to make an effort to put that guardrail through that tree. Unbelievable. And if that railing gets broken, you fix it right away. The dog will run off and we fix it immediately, right? Do something to fix it. And unfortunately, out on the road, we don't do that. We have products that get old. We don't fix them. We have a guardrail. We have signs. And we just allow them to go. Common sense tells you don't do those things. Common sense says use this concept called the safe system approach. Start using the vaccines. You tell me why India is not using them. Because I want to talk to every one of you. You guys find the right person for me to talk to. I will talk to them. Doing this for 35 years. I want to believe the reason they're not happening in India is because you don't know about them. You're building those condominiums with the balconies that are safe. It costs some money. So the road to awareness, going back, open your eyes. Start taking responsibility for your actions. Pay attention. Pay attention. Look around. See what's happening out in the road. Be creative. Common sense. Common sense. Use common sense and creativity. I've always said that if necessity is the mother of all invention, then creativity is the father. But sometimes to be creative, it takes courage. That 2020 Vision Zero. No more traffic deaths. Okay, I'm almost ready to shut up. I will shut up in just a second. All right. So again, very quickly, any questions? I don't know. I've got some for you. Let's see who's paying attention. Ready? Like you know, I'm giving them an exam. Here we go. Ready? Number one, AASHTO. Anybody remember? American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials. Number two, 3 legs of the road safety stool. Remember I said you need all 3. Remember, it's the road user, the pedestrian, the bicyclist. It's the vehicle. It's the road. Number 3, cost to society. I didn't get into this one. The cost to society for a fatality is 70 times gross national product per capita. Find the gross national product in India per capita, multiply by 70. That's your cost for every one of those fatalities. Now multiply that by 300,000, and you see how we get to the 7.5% lost economic gross national product. How many fatalities worldwide? 1,350,000. AASHTO's 4 recommendations. I said I got a problem. AASHTO and Riser said, number 1, eliminate the hazard. Can't eliminate the hazard, move it. Can't move it, modify it, can't modify it, shield it. What year were the first students admitted to Roorkee College when it was called the Thomason College of Civil Engineering? Anybody? Archidad, you got it. Anybody know? What year were you first to have students admitted? Back then, that's how it looked a long time ago, 1847. Been around a long time. Last question is Harkidad a great guy or what? How about it? There he is. Okay, there he is. Thank you. All right. So, you learned something, but again, learning something, my dad used to always tell me this. When you die, you want to have people say you made wise choices in your life. To make wise choices, you need 2 things. You need knowledge. You never stop learning. But then you have to use that knowledge. That's the prudence. Because knowledge means nothing unless you put it into practice. Another great quote by my friend, Mr. Einstein. He said, this insanity is a great one. But the other one, he said, the world's a dangerous place. Not because of the people necessarily who do the evil, but people look on and do nothing about it. And again, you encounter many defeats in this world. Making these roads safe, it's going to take generations in India. But you got to start now. You got to have people doing their job. You got to believe that one person can make a difference. You got to believe that everybody should try. No regrets. No regret. I love this quote. Something my kids used to say. They would run cross country at the beginning of the race. They'd be yelling, hey, Jimmy, no regrets. Hey, Frank, no regrets. I asked my son one day, Mike, what are you doing? What's this no regrets thing? He says, Dad, we're reminding everybody at the beginning of the race, when you get to the end of the race, and that kid in front of you is only 5 meters ahead, there's only 10 meters left, kid from the other team, it's too late. We're reminding each other to start strong. We get to that first hill, we'll yell to each other again. Hey, no regrets, no regrets. Push yourself up that hill. No regrets of getting to the end and saying, if I had only. In the road safety world, it means if I'd only done something, I could have saved somebody's life. And so the great quote we use a lot, if something's important to you, you'll find a way. Anything in life, I don't care what it is. If it's important to you, you'll find a way to make it happen. If it's not, you'll find an excuse. Excuses are the tools of the incompetent. I'm totally confident. I've heard them all when it comes to road safety. I've heard them all in India. And again, the people telling me those excuses, they really don't want to do it. They're looking for excuses. No more excuses. And if you're not the people who are going to make a difference in India, then who is it? And you got to tell me, because I'll go talk to them. And if today's not the day you start doing it, then tell me when. Because it's right now. It's not at the end of the year. We stop making excuses. We start making changes. You find a way. And finally, the reason for doing it is the best gift that anybody can give to their family is to get home safely that night. You want to be the reason somebody gets home safely at night. Forgotten pandemic. The forgotten pandemic, the first responders, the road authorities, the traffic police, transportation engineers, academia. You are the ones that are going to make the difference. So again, right about now, you guys are all thinking, man, we need a break. This guy's been going on. Can we please have a break? Please, 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 please. You're thinking, I can't take it anymore. Okay, I kind of know how you feel. Well, I'll go forward and see if, are there any questions? I know we ran a little bit late. We had a little bit late start, so I apologize for that. So, Archidad, I'll get you a copy of this, and I encourage you to get it out to everybody. This is your road safety week, road safety month now in India right now. Maybe it's time to go out and try to do something about what's happening on those roads and not coming back a year from now and saying, you know, Mike, we probably should have started a year ago. Because unfortunately, for 300,000 people, it's going to be too late. You can't make the difference. You got to believe that you can do it. And a lot of people are counting on you to do it. Do your job, find a way. So, Archidad, we have any questions? I know you ran a little bit long.
Yeah.
I apologize.
I'm also waiting for any questions. If there are, people can use a chat box or a Q&A box as well.
Yeah, and I can't,
to ask any question.
as a presenter, I cannot see the chat box, so you're gonna have to help me out.
Yeah, sure. If there will be any questions, I will let you know.
Okay. And as I said, I know a lot of you are not maybe in transportation engineering. It's great what you're doing, the social service. It's great. Again, maybe the best thing you can do is, you know,
Yes, Alok, you can ask a question.
Okay.
If you want, let me know. I will make you a panelist and you can ask a question like face to face or virtually. Or maybe you can just put up a question in chat box itself.
Yeah.
Okay, just wait a minute.
All right. So again, the
I guess Alok, now you can speak.
Am I audible?
yeah,
Yes, yes, yes.
we can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I'm Alok Singh. I'm doing my master's in transportation engineering, and I happen to be from Army. So most of my surveys from last 13 years has been in the areas in mountains and
Gotcha.
altitude ranging above 9,000 feet. So what I have seen is in mountains, due to space constraint or maybe we don't have enough space. So most of the times the roads are undivided. They don't have medians in between. And the second issue is of the landslides. And the third is, like you mentioned, the kind of barriers we are. There again, we try to use those rigid barriers. However, unlike plains, if we miss out, we are generally gone into the valley. So, what's your do we have certain aspects to keep in mind while constructing the roads in mountains?
Yeah, one of your biggest problems in mountains are the trucks. And the trucks, the big problems for a couple of reasons. One, going up, they're driving very slow, right? And that frustrates people. You want to pass them. Number two, going down, if they lose their brakes, and that happens way too often, again, then they're going off and they're hitting the barrier and going off to the side. So a couple of solutions that are being used. Number one, there's something called a 2+1 road. This started over in Sweden. Keep in mind the safest roads in the world statistically are something that they would be basically in the United Kingdom. We call the Sun countries: Sweden, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands. And again, they built in a lot of the technologies, a lot of these vaccines, they're using them. And one thing they developed over in Sweden, especially on a lot of mountain roads, they have one road in each direction. But every once in a while, there's more space, and they will add a third lane, and they will have that third lane going northbound, just northbound for a couple of kilometers. That allows the vehicles going northbound to pass safely around. There's two lanes now, so they can't pass. And then it will switch back, and now to go to the southbound, they will have two lanes. So again, they don't have the space all the way through them. They go one through one, but they give people a place where they can pass safely. Because a lot of times those crashes, those head-on crashes, are people trying to pass a truck. So those are being used, the 2+1s. Number two, there's something called the truck escape ramp. You look up something called a dragnet. The dragnet. The dragnet uses the same technology that's used on an aircraft carrier with turbines that catch the tail hook. There's an airplane coming down. It catches that tail hook to bring the airplane to a stop. They use the same thing as these nets that they set up. They allow the truck driver, they say, if you're losing control of your truck, go off to the side here. And sometimes they'll be elevated, sometimes they'll be flat, and you'll hit these dragnets and they'll bring that truck to a stop. So the truck isn't running down that hill without its brakes. You are right, putting in the barriers on the side is always difficult. It's always a challenge. And again, they will typically put in a rigid barrier on the side, pretty much because they're worried about the trucks. A lot of times they can't get good anchoring. That's a huge challenge. And again, the best thing you can do, and I'll go back to the recommendations coming from the second decade of action. You guys remember I told you what was the one recommendation that went through all 12 of the recommendations? What was the one thing? Anybody remember what I said? Control what? Speed. Control the speed. Bring the speed down with those truckers, with the people in the cars on those roads. And again, a lot of times it's going to be the automated enforcement using safety cameras. I don't call them a speed cameras. I call them a safety camera. Safety cameras, you got to start using these in India. There's other countries, you would not even think about speeding because you don't see a policeman, but you're going to get a ticket. Guaranteed, you're going to have to pay a ticket. And again, at a certain amount of tickets, you're not going to be able to drive anymore. Well, again, those are the same kind of logic you have to get into the head of the drivers in India. And again, I am picking on India. I'm sorry. You have the worst roads in the world. And again, I've been doing this too long. And again, it's not your fault individually. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. You're one of the drivers. But it's your fault individually if you don't try to do something about it. I hope that answered the question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, so moving ahead, if any other questions, we can have that, or else maybe we can conclude the session.
Can I ask one more question? If there
Sure.
are no...
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. Second question is again, Michael, it's related to mountains only. Like whenever we are driving and there is a tunnel coming ahead, so there's a blind moment we enter the tunnel. Suppose it is a sunny day, we are driving in the daytime, and we hardly find any good visibility inside a tunnel. So for like couple of seconds or 3 seconds, the eyes have to adjust, and suddenly there's a blindness. So do we have something in mind to improve that?
I'm not again. I'm not too big to say I don't know. I don't not know the answer to that one. I know what you're talking about. I will do some checking for you though, and I will. I'll make sure you guys all have my email address, okay? Because you're not going to do this by yourself. You gotta ask people. You gotta ask questions. And again, I will be around. I'll make sure you ask me. But I'll do ask somebody, because I would imagine there's so much work being done with simulators now and understanding how people respond that there's got to be something with the lighting going in, some kind of lighting systems as you go into those tunnels to help you to adjust to that darkness quickly. I will try to find that answer. I don't know off the top of my head, but again, Akida, make sure that I will send you the PDF as well as my contact information. Please make sure you get that out to everybody.
Yeah, sure. I have put forward your email address to all the attendees.
Thank you.
They can contact if they want.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have one more question
Right.
that says, how about jaywalking? How to bring awareness among people to cross the roads safely?
Yeah, how about what was the word you used first? How about jaywalking? Jaywalking.
Yeah, jaywalking.
Jaywalking. Yeah. Again, there's things you can do, and again, if you know ahead of time. Again, the reason people are jaywalking, they have no other choice, right? So again, it gets back to enforcement. I know this is difficult. But what you do if there's places with a lot of traffic, the obvious answer is I told you before, a lot of places are taking the speed. You can't control people. It's just very difficult. So what they do, they take the speed limit down. Take the speed limit down to 30 kilometers an hour. Again, educate people, let them know that it's wrong to jaywalk. Number 2, enforcement. Remember the E's? Remember the 5 E's? Education, enforcement. They all kind of work together. Somebody goes across that street, have a policeman waiting on the other side. You don't have to do it all the time, but the word will get out. Oh my God, I crossed over there. I got a fine. I got fined. Pick a number. Make it a significant fine. Make it significant. People don't want to do it. The other option, you can put up fences down the middle of the road. Put a fence up to keep people from crossing over. And also we use overhead bridges. Now again, if you have the proper bridges out there, people don't want to use them, but they will use them if you tell them, number 1, it's dangerous if you go across that road. Somebody's going to die. Number 2, if you're stupid enough to do it, we are going to penalize you significantly for doing it. And number 3, to discourage you from doing it, putting a fence down the middle of the road. Now, again, we've seen situations where people go out and cut the fence. I mean, people, as I said, people are stupid. People make mistakes. And all you can try to do as an engineer is come up with other engineering concepts to make sure they understand what they're doing is wrong, penalize them when they do it, and then go out and fix that fence and encourage them not to do it again. Good question. Really good question. That's a problem. Pedestrians, I don't know the numbers, but I would look in India, and I would think that, and you can look up these numbers, and I'll send you something also. We didn't have time to get into it, where you can see the statistics, that one report that I showed you. I would imagine that pedestrians. You got so many motorcycles. That's the problem. Pedestrians and motorcycles, what we call vulnerable road users, probably make up 60% of your fatalities in India. I'm just going to the top of my head, I'm going to guess. So again, if you can address why are they dying, in a lot of cases for motorcyclists, it's human error. They do stupid things on a motorcycle, dumb things. And again, they cause their own fatality, which is sad. Pedestrians also. But vulnerable road users, really a lot of times their safety is not dependent on that individual, it's dependent on somebody else. So if I told you, are you allowed to smoke cigarettes in a public building in India? I'm going to guess not. I'm going to guess you're not allowed to do it, right? And you're not allowed to do it because there's a law. Why is there a law? Not because they don't want you smoking. It's because that secondhand smoke is going to kill somebody else. That's why they put the law out there. Well, shouldn't there be a law to protect that person walking down the street from a drunk driver, from a driver on his telephone, from a driver who's distracted, from a driver who's driving too fast? Shouldn't there be a law to protect that person? Well, there may be a law, but if it's not enforced, then there's no law. So again, this is all common sense. I'm not telling you guys anything you didn't know before, but something's not working. I'm here to tell you something. And again, I've told this, I've talked to your minister. I've been in this game a long time. When it comes to road safety, I'm an old man and I'm in the hurry. All right, I'm running out of time. And the no regrets thing keeps running through my head. Are you doing enough, Mike? That's why it's great for this opportunity. You know, when I heard, from Niraj, asked me to make this presentation, I was happy to do it. Do it anywhere at any time. So thank you for the opportunity, Akidat. I just hope that you learned something, and I just hope you use the knowledge and go forward. Continue to learn.
Yeah, thank you very much as well for your time for your presentation. We have one more question. Do we have a manual for safe system approach?
Yeah, I will send you. Definitely, there is. Absolutely, yes. I will make a note. I will send the manual. It's a manual for safe system approach for lower and middle income countries, which is perfect. So again, a lot of these things that don't cost a lot of money. They don't cost very insignificant cost to do it. For example, the little safety edge, that didn't cost a lot of money to do that. The rumble strips, that cost a lot of money. They're very, very, very effective. We have something called a crash modification factor. Again, by doing certain things, we can reduce the number of fatalities at those sites. So I will send you that safe system approach manual. And I'm also going to send you that report to understand when you go in and try to convince a politician or a road authority to do something, you got to show them the effects. You do something called a benefit cost ratio. To do that, you need to know what's the cost of that fatality, what's the cost of the serious injury at that site. You get some data, you know what's happened in the past. You know by doing certain things, you can reduce the number of fatalities at those sites. Now you can put together a benefit cost ratio and you can show somebody by doing this investment, here's what you get back. And again, that's what's going to make the difference.
Yep. So, any more questions? We can wait for a minute, I guess, minute or so, and then. Okay, so there is one question on high-speed corridors like expressway. Speed like 120 kmph is allowed. How we can reduce pile-up accident in time of fog?
Yeah, you got to keep in mind when we talk about the speed, the road is designed for a certain speed. Okay, there's something called the design speed when you build a road, and typically that takes into account the curvature, it takes into account the vertical, the horizontal curvature, and the alignments. And again, that speed, the design speed, maybe you design that road so it can be driven safely at 140 kilometers an hour. Then you set a speed limit at a lower number, 120. For example, the Autobahn in Germany, it's one of the safest roads in the world. Why? There's no speed limit. Well, there is a speed limit when you get to the exit. It goes down to 100 kilometers an hour. Also, the drivers are very, very, very courteous drivers. They're intelligent drivers. You only go in that outside lane to pass. That's the only reason. You get in, you come back over again. If you're in that outside lane, you better be passing somebody. So again, they are intelligent drivers. So the high-speed roads are sometimes the safest roads, to be perfectly honest with you. So it's not a question of just there reducing the speed. Certain curvatures, you need to reduce the speed, but you got to maintain whatever speed limit you put out there is enforced. Because a lot of times you have a speed limit of 120. You know yourself, if you're driving 120, there's a guy right behind you flashing his lights, right? Because you're driving too slow. He wants you up at 130, 140, 150. Well, again, that gets back to enforcement. The automated enforcement on a lot of these roads, you're going to get a ticket if you go 130, 140, 150 on these roads that are safe, the Autobahn included. So when we talk about reducing speed, especially we're talking about reducing speed where you have vehicles and pedestrians trying to interact, trying to share the road. Vehicles, pedestrians, bicycles, trying to share the road. That's where you want those speeds reduced. That's where we're talking about the 30 kilometers an hour. The other roads that are 120, as long as that road has a design that will handle 120, just now make sure people are driving 120. It's pretty simple, and you're probably going to have a safer road. You don't necessarily have to take that speed limit down at a high-speed road. Common sense.
I hope that answers the question. In case there is any cross question, yeah. Yes.
And again, especially you guys who are girls, the guys and girls involved in transportation engineering, send me an email and I'll make sure. In fact, I'll just give it to you real fast. I just retired from the International Road Federation at the end of the year. So right now, my grandchildren are my bosses. All right. So, but my email address it's Drez at AOL. ZEKEDREZ at AOL.com. I'm one of like 34 people who still use AOL. All right. But go ahead and send me an email. It's important you get involved. There's people you can talk to, you can meet with. There's organizations you should be a part of. Again, you need to learn. I'm guessing that you're not learning it in school right now, because I'm guessing again, and I'm sure your professors are aware of it. A lot of times they just look and say, "Well, it's beyond our ability." And if your standards, I'll give you a real quick quote. I was talking to a guy in a traffic engineering organization, a consulting organization, and I said to him, I said, "Guys, what are you doing?" And they said, "Mike, all this cool stuff you talk about is great. But when we go and we bid on a project, bid on a job, we have to use the local standards, the local specifications. Sometimes there are no local specifications. Sometimes the local specifications are 40 years old." He says, "If we add in all your safety features to our bid and our competition doesn't, competition's price will be less and competition will get the job." So his quote to me, he said, "Mike, as long as the road authority accepts garbage," but he didn't use garbage. He used a four-letter word that began with an S and ended with a T. He says, "As long as the road authority accepts garbage, we'll continue to give them garbage." It's not going to work. The road authorities need to understand that they have to ask for, they need to understand what's available. Then they include it in the request for bid, the request for purchase. Then they start using something called safety audit, which is another really important thing that's going to make a huge difference in this world. Road safety, proper road safety audit by qualified road safety auditors. Okay, I know one place there's a road safety audit. They had 120 kilometer an hour road, and they put in bus stops and pedestrian crossings. No, you don't do that. And yet some road safety auditor said it was okay. Common sense. So again, road safety audit, somebody comes in, and just like when you're designing a new road, you'll sit around a table and somebody from the environment's going to be there. You're not going to build a new road in India that's affect the environment. You're not going to be allowed to do it. But why are you allowed to build that road that's not safe then? Because you don't have anybody sitting around that table who understands the importance of safety. You can make a difference. You will make a difference. You have to make a difference. You can't keep killing a city every single year in India. You can't continue it. Can't do it. Okay, so how could that, again, if there's more questions.
Yeah, we have one more question.
Okay.
Do you have any inbuilt course in your country to educate children in their school time?
Yeah, there's a lot of really good courses for again, I'll send you a note with courses for kids. They are effective. They're good. You know, they're good as long as the kids are learning in school, and then they get in the car and they watch mom and dad drive like an idiot. You know, and all the things the kids were learning in school, the kids are going to read. They're going to react. They're going to emulate what you do. So again, there's courses out there, basically teaching the kids how to cross at a crossing. Teaching the kids. I had 3 kids. I get my car and my kids in the back seat. Daddy, put on your seatbelt. Put on your seatbelt. And finally, again, I admit I didn't put it on because I put it on because I wanted them to shut up. All right, I put on my seatbelt. Well, maybe that's what we need to do. You know, have those kids tell them, Daddy, Mommy, Daddy, put on your seatbelt. Crossing at the zebra crossing. Again, we have down in one country in Bolivia, kids your age go out, university students go out on the morning. They dress up like a zebra, these big costumes, and they go out and they have a big sign. They tell people, cross at the zebra crossing. Well, again, they go into the schools. They teach the kids. And one mother was telling me she got off the bus at mid-block. She was going to jaywalk across, and her little girl said, "Oh no, mommy, zebra says to cross at the zebra crossing." So they had to walk a half a block to get to the crossing to go across. They are effective. They do work, but they will emulate what they see. So you have to set the good example. I'll send you some information on those also.
Yeah, sure. You can just send us the information and I will forward it to all the attendees of the session.
Okay,
And to
perfect.
anybody else who would require the information.
Yeah.
I guess you can still wait for a minute or so if there would be any questions or else.
So again, I think Agudot, I didn't have time before, but if I can, I'm going to take, if I can take another 5 minutes. I want to show something real quick. I zipped through this, but I think it's worth doing. This is the close I'm going to close with. This is a guy who made a very powerful presentation at the University of Texas commencement. I want you to listen very carefully to his words. He's an ex-Navy SEAL. Just listen very carefully. He will say things much better than I ever could.
Want to change the world? Start off by making your bed. If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride and will encourage you to do another task, another. By the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made. But you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. The mass SEAL training are a series of long swims that must be completed. One is the night swim. Before the swim, the instructors joyfully brief the students on all the species of sharks that inhabit the waters off San Clemente. They assure you, however, that no student has ever been eaten by a shark. It's not that they can remember. But you are also taught that if a shark begins to circle your position, stand your ground. Do not swim away. Do not act afraid. And if the shark, hungry for a midnight snack, darts towards you and summons up all your strength, punch him in the snout. He will turn and swim away. There are a lot of sharks in the world. If you hope to complete the swim, you will have to deal with them. If you want to change the world, don't back down from the sharks. Over a few weeks of difficult training, my SEAL class, which started with 150 men, was down to just 42. There were now 6 boat crews of 7 men each. I was in the boat with the tall guys, but the best boat crew we had was made up of little guys, the Munchkin crew we call them. No one was over 5'5". The Munchkin boat crew had 1 American Indian, 1 African American, 1 Polish American, 1 Greek American, 1 Italian American, and 2 tough kids from the Midwest. They out-paddled, outran, and outswam all the other boat crews. The big men in the other boat crews would always make good-natured fun of the tiny little flippers the Munchkins put on their tiny little feet prior to every swim. But somehow these little guys, from every corner of the nation and the world, always had the last laugh. swimming faster than everyone and reaching the shore long before the rest of us. SEAL training was a great equalizer. Nothing mattered but your will to succeed, not your color, not your ethnic background, not your education, not your social status. If you want to change the world, measure a person by the size of their heart, not by the size of their flippers. The 9th week of training is referred to as Hell Week. It is 6 days of no sleep, constant physical and mental harassment, and one special day at the mud flats. The mud flats are an area between San Diego and Tijuana where the water runs off and creates the Tijuana sloughs, a swampy patch of terrain where the mud will engulf. It is on Wednesday of Hell Week. Huddle out in the mud flats and spend the next 15 hours trying to survive the freezing cold, the howling wind, and the incessant pressure of equipment and trucks. As the sun began to set that Wednesday evening, my training class, having committed some egregious infraction of the rules, was ordered into the mud. Mud consumed each man until there was nothing visible but our hands. The instructors told us we could leave the mud if only 5 men would quit. Only 5 men, just 5 men, and we could get out of the oppressive cold. Looking around the mud flat, it was apparent that some students were about to give up. It was still over 8 hours till the sun came up. 8 more hours of bone-chilling cold. The chattering teeth and shivering bones of the trainees were so loud, it's hard to hear anything. And then one voice began to echo through the night. One voice raised in song. The song was terribly outdated, but sung with great enthusiasm. One voice became 2, and 2 became 3, and before long, everyone in the class was singing. The instructors threatened us with more time in the mud if we kept up the singing, but the singing persisted, and somehow the mud seemed a little warmer, and the wind a little tamer, and the dawn not so far away. If I have learned anything in my time traveling the world, it is the power of hope. The power of one person, a Washington, a Lincoln, King, Mandela, even a young girl from Pakistan, Malala. One person can change the world by giving people hope. So if you want to change the world, start each day with a task completed. Find someone to help you through life. Respect everyone. Know that life is not fair and you will fail often. But if you take some risks, step up when the times are the toughest, face down the bullies, lift up the downtrodden, and never, ever give up. If you do these things, the next generation and the generations that follow will live in a world far better than the one we have today. And what started here will indeed have changed the world for the better.
No regrets. Change the world. Find a way. So again, Archidad, thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you and all the other students, your professors. And again, all I hope is this is a day that maybe we do start to make some changes. Maybe today's the day we look back. As you go forward, find a way. You can do this. You can do it. Other countries have done it. Look what's happened in Sweden. Sweden used to have terrible numbers, number of fatalities per 100,000 deaths, 100,000 deaths per population. They did things. They brought the numbers down. India needs to do those things. Don't just say it's too big, Mike, we can't do it. It's sort of like, you got to start somewhere. Start somewhere, make a difference. You got to believe you can do it, and you're going to do it. Change the world.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Thank you very much again for your time and for your very interactive, knowledgeable, again, as I mentioned by one of the attendees, wonderful presentation. And I guess it's like one of the best webinars which I've seen, to be honest. And it's been really interactive and really amazing, I would say.
Well, thanks so much, Archidad. I will let all you, it's getting late for you. Go out, behave yourselves, drive carefully, obviously, and be serious about this. Be serious. Be the person who's going to make the difference. Got to believe. There's a great quote by one of our presidents. It says, one person can make a difference, and every person should try. And don't go back to that quote from Einstein, the world's a dangerous place, not because of the people who do things evil, but for everybody else who looks on and doesn't try to do anything about it. You're the people. You're the future. You're the ones that are going to change the sun countries maybe to the Sin countries. I don't know, that doesn't sound good, but Sun countries instead of Sweden, the UK, and the Netherlands. Maybe it should be Sweden, India, and the Netherlands. Why not? Why not? Go do it. Find a way.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much once again for your time and efforts. And I guess now we can surely conclude the webinar.
All right. Thank you all very much. Stay in touch. Good luck. I will look forward to hearing from you. Take care. And I look forward to seeing you over in India someday. See ya. Come to Chicago. Come to Chicago. You got an invitation. Come to Chicago anytime. Not right now. It's too cold. Later. Come to Chicago. All right. See you later. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye.
Okay. Bye. Bye.